there. Ben Gilbert here from Business Insider, and this is Gaming Insider, where we play video games live on the internet, and sometimes you catch them after they're live even. I'm Ben Gilbert, as previously introduced, and today we're playing Spider-Man for the PlayStation 4. Today you've got me. Next time you might have somebody else. Who knows? But for today you've got me, and so if you're joining us live, thank you. This is our first ever broadcast. We really appreciate you joining us live. And if you have any questions or comments, drop them into the box on YouTube, and I will be seeing them. Our operators in the control room separately will be seeing them, feeding them over to me, if they're good enough. So make sure they're good questions. But hello, everybody out there on the internet, and thank you for joining us. So again, this is Spider-Man on the PlayStation 4. It's out today, today being September 7th. It's a PlayStation 4 exclusive. It's a massive open world game, and it's very attractive. If you see me messing with my ear a little bit, I've got an earpiece in, it's being a little finicky. Bear with me, I'm not doing anything crazy there, I promise. So anyway, this is Spider-Man. We're very early on in the game. I'm intentionally jumping in pretty early. There's an intro part with a fight, lots of different stuff there. That's fine. You don't need to see that. You might want to see that on your own, you know? But we're going to be doing some exploring, kind of showing off what this game has to offer, which is a lot. It's a third-person action game, so there's a lot of fighting. There's a lot of traversal. It's an open-world game. So this Manhattan that I'm in right here, that I am leaping through and swinging through majestically like a bird or like a Spider-Man, is exciting to explore, and it's really large, like Manhattan itself. Hilariously, ironically, bizarrely, we are actually playing this from Manhattan right now in BI's headquarters in beautiful downtown Manhattan in the financial district. So it's a little weird, if anything. I can go to the place where I am physically playing this in real life in this game, but I'm not gonna. Not yet, at least, anyway. Not before I can show you kind of the whole scope of the game. So early on, you can see there are instructions on the screen in the bottom middle. It's kind of still tutorial stuff. I'm here standing over what looks to be Madison Square Garden. Yeah, a lot of this is navigable just by knowing Manhattan. So you may not, because you may not live here. I do live here. I don't live in Manhattan, but I'm here all the time. So I can actually navigate Spider-Man's world just by knowing, you know, where things are in real life, which is pretty weird. You can also see that I'm able to pretty easily navigate here without doing a lot. I'm swinging around using just the right trigger, the R2 trigger on the PlayStation controller, and it's relatively easy to just grab onto something and find grapple points as I go. And that's kind of the major point of Spider-Man on PlayStation 4. It's kind of the major point of this of this whole game is being a amazing superhero who can go wherever he wants in Manhattan at high speeds, and doing so stylishly, right? Like I can run into a building full speed, and it doesn't slam into it and stop. He runs up the building. He immediately starts climbing. I could stop on the side of a building and just kind of hang out. It's not a problem. Spider-Man is ready for it. He'll backflip off of it even. He doesn't, everything looks really good without having to do a lot, basically, right? Like I just landed amazingly in this game, looking cool while doing very little, which might sound oversimplified. It's not. There's fine modes of control to this game if you really want to have that kind of experience. You can do these point launches and kind of speed up. And the game sets up various beans for you to do these things, whether it's chases or other stuff. So let's jump into some of that stuff, though. We're going to do some of the main story missions early in the game here. I'm probably going to be skipping through a lot of the cutscenes, but there's some of that. And I'll also skip ahead later on. I'll probably load up a save and jump ahead so we can get an idea of what this game looks like later on in the game. And I'm trying to spoil as little as possible, but beware, you know, like you're watching this game being played live, you're gonna get some stuff spoiled. But anyway, while we watch this cutscene, maybe I can skip through it. I don't think I can skip. Oh, I can. Oh, great. Okay. So we've got a question here. While this plays separately, from Graham, it sounds like. It says, did they accurately render the entire city of New York, or the entire city of NYC? It's all of Manhattan. It is just Manhattan, I should say, right from the beginning. This is just Manhattan. You're not going to get the boroughs, New York City being Staten Island, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan, and Queens. You don't get all 5 of those. You just get Manhattan, the middle central island, a lot of what's thought of as the main icon of New York City. You know, you get stuff like the World Trade Center and Union Square and Washington Square Park. There's a lot of these like major landmarks in the game, but they don't directly, perfectly render out every little detail. There are whole buildings missing sometimes. Sometimes things are just shrunken pretty dramatically, like Union Square is way smaller than it is in normal life. Washington Square Park is way smaller than it is, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's some of that. New York City, or Manhattan rather, in this game also ends at like Harlem. Whereas in real life, Manhattan goes much more north. There are many streets beyond that. So anyway, I'm going to try to skip past this cutscene. I can skip it and jump back into the game. But there's a good look at some of the other stuff you're doing in this game other than just exploring the open world of Spider-Man, right? This is a game about Spider-Man as a person, as a Peter Parker, the guy who lives in the world of relatively modern New York City that is in this game. And the things he has to live with, right? Like he's trying to make a living and pay rent and feed himself and whatever, and that's very hard as a guy who spends a lot of his time outside crime fighting for free. And so some of the stuff he does, for instance, is work with a friend of his, Dr. Octavius, who, if you're a Spider-Man fan, you may know as a main character in the Spider-Man series. And he is working on prosthetics, and so he's got some stuff he's got to help with here in terms of these kind of mini games that you play. This is kind of like a game that you may have heard of called Pipe Dreams. There's another one. It's like a pattern recognition game, but they're essentially a way of mixing up some of the stuff that you do in this game. And these are not super difficult, right? You can see that I've got pieces here on one side. I'm dropping them in. I've got a finite number of pieces, and I'm trying to make this electricity flow to the end point of a circuit, essentially. But it's a relatively simple game, but it breaks up some of the action of this game, right? There's a good sense of pacing in Spider-Man for PlayStation 4, where you're not always beating up bad guys or swinging around or taking down some supervillain. A lot of times you're helping out with a science project or talking to your Aunt May or many other things. So let's do this one as well pretty quick. Oh. Sure. We've got another question here. Yeah, okay, so yeah, there's some complaints about the resolution of the stream. That's, I think, just a measure of us streaming it. We're working out some kinks as well. This is early days for us, and so this is the first one, actually. I shouldn't say early days, so we might have some resolution issues to work out, but we're trying to figure that out. So I'm sorry, though, if it looks a little low res. I promise that this game is not unattractive. It is definitely a very good-looking game that I've been enjoying on a PS4 Pro at home, and it looks good, yeah, for lack of a better word. And then we've got another question here from Since 1989. Any info if this game will be available on other platforms? So that's a great question. So this game was made by Insomniac Games. They're known for the Ratchet & Clank games. And they make a lot of multi-platform games as well, or they have made multi-platform games as well. They're not owned by any particular company. But this game was made specifically for Sony's platform, the PlayStation 4. It was paid for by Sony, and as a result, it will stay on Sony's platform. Sony also, I believe, owns the rights to Spider-Man, so that's another facet of this, although I know that Spider-Man is a Marvel property, and Marvel games are on many platforms. Yeah, it's unlikely, I would say, that happens. I'm sorry to say. But great question, and thank you for asking. And I will solve this puzzle now. And if you have any other questions, feel free to ask. The game is $60. It's available as of today, digitally and physically in stores. There may even be some limited edition stuff if you're looking for that. I believe there's a Spider-Man PlayStation 4 console if you're looking to get all the way crazy. This is just kind of introducing some more difficult puzzles here that have voltages as well. This is very little of what you will do in the game, though. I should be clear, this is not something you're going to spend all of your time doing. It certainly hasn't been the case for me. It's been a small part of the game, but it's being introduced early on because they're just kind of giving you an idea of all the different stuff in the game. So yeah, these are all good. I've fixed the doctor's schematic, and we've uploaded it. And yeah, the world here looks good though, like the world of Spider-Man, the universe of Spider-Man, the Manhattan, the interiors, whatever. It's all very attractive. It's not like the best looking game on the PlayStation 4 or anything like that, but it is certainly very attractive. All right, we've got one more thing to help the doctor with very quickly. This is the other type of puzzles that are in the game. These require picking up fragments and moving them. This is very simple early on intentionally because they're just trying to kind of teach you how to go. So there are spaces to fill in and you're completing patterns. It gets much more complicated. And these are a lot of fun, again, as something that you can like do optionally in your downtime with this game. There are very few instances I've found where you're forced to spend a bunch of time doing puzzles or puzzle solving. A lot of the game is spent playing as Spider-Man, leaping around as Spider-Man, being a superhero. So let's get out of here. We've done some of that. We've got another question, this time from Scary Flower Productions. What previous Spider-Man game would you say is most similar to this game in terms of gameplay? And that's a great question, because there have been several Spider-Man games before. There was a bunch of Spider-Man games that I believe were just on PlayStation 2. They might have also been on the original Xbox. And they were largely based around the films that came out many years ago. And a lot of people love Spider-Man 2. And specifically, they love Spider-Man 2 because it has a really great sense of an open world and a fun, fluid sense of movement. And it really feels like Insomniac Games, the people who made this game, went really hard on that specifically. So much of this game feels like it is centered around you moving fluidly through the world and enjoying that as much as possible. So I would say it compares most to that game, Spider-Man 2, the game that is, if anything, the best of the Spider-Man games. I personally loved the Spider-Man game on Super Nintendo many years ago, and there's one aspect of this game that is very similar to that game in that you have a Spidey sense that is important. And specifically in this game, it's used for fights. So if you're about to get hit, Spider-Man's Spidey sense goes off. You see it in kind of like a glowing white area of effect around his head. And if you press the button at the right time, the parry button or the dodge button, Spider-Man will leap out of the way and shoot a web into the enemy's face. And it's a very simple mechanic, but it's something that uses a concept from the world of Spider-Man, his Spidey sense, in a very smart gameplay way. So there's a lot of stuff like that that I think that they've done a really good job with. You can also maybe see on the screen there's just the facts with JJJ. It's J. Jonah Jacobson, something like that. I can't remember his full name, but he was somebody that in the comics, in the Spider-Man comics, was a coworker of Peter's of Spider-Man's rather, at the Daily Bugle, the newspaper of New York City, Spider-Man New York City. And in this, he's like a Sean Hannity-esque character who is got a radio show and is to use a extremely polite word, firebrand. He talks a lot of mess about Spider-Man on the radio, and you can choose whether or not you want to listen to it. So that's up to you. I like listening to it because I think it's funny, but it's also pretty ridiculous. So I understand if you want to turn it off. Smartly, they've put something right up front in the game so that you can choose whether or not you want to turn it off. And so this is Yuri Watanabe. She's one of the captains of the police force, and she's kind of Spider-Man's in to speaking with the police force. She'll be your kind of guide along throughout the game. She's the I don't know, the police chief to Batman, but for Spider-Man in this game. Yeah, she's a nice person. She's got nice things to say. She's an interesting character. This game is definitely full of interesting characters. It's something that I think they do a really good job with in this game, is that it feels like a cohesive story. There feels like there's a bunch of different interesting characters that I care about. You know, it's a comic book still. It's not the deepest thing in the world necessarily always, but it's certainly interesting enough to keep you invested during the you know, however many hours you're going to spend playing this game. I would say a lot of hours. I've spent many hours playing this game so far, and I'm not done. It is, as previously mentioned, an open world, but that open world is like very densely packed with stuff to do. Right off the bat, there are these kind of unlocks for the map. They're going to introduce the map in just a second, but it looks like somebody has taken down these towers all over the city that the police use to monitor the city. You can see that we've got Manhattan here. This is Manhattan Island, and it's all blacked out because these police towers have been taken out. So your first job as Spider-Man is you can go around and unlock these towers that unlock sections of the map. It's very similar to Assassin's Creed has towers, Far Cry has towers. It's a concept in many open world games. It's similar here. It's up to you how you want to do them. There's a relatively simple mini game of matching wavelengths with each of your thumbsticks to solve them. It's not too hard, but each one you unlock not only unlocks a section of map, but it unlocks a ton of stuff to do in that section of map. And so, for instance, there are crimes happening all over. And these ones, with these gentlemen in ski masks, are called thug crimes. And so these are presumably thugs, and you are supposed to take them out. And so I'm going to tap triangle to web strike, which is going to initiate a fight. Okay, so we've got one more question. It's, can you go into buildings? And the answer is not really. Basically, no. There are some instances where, you know, you're going into something because there's a mission in there, you know, but it's always the kind of thing where you go to a door and you press a button and you then enter a building. It's not like you're going into a building and it's a barbershop and you can choose what haircut you want and whatever. There's no level of that. It's really not meant to be that kind of open world. Like, I'm thinking of like Grand Theft Auto, right, where you go to barbershops or you go to a tattoo shop, you go to a clothing store or whatever. There's some buildings that you go into, but they're usually like stores. There's none of that in this that I've seen, at very least, I'm very close to the end of the game, if not at the end of the game. So basically no, but I would say that the verticality makes it so that you don't feel like that's a limitation. In Grand Theft Auto, when you're on the ground all the time, it's important that there's some sense of life to those buildings, that you can feel like you can go to a store or whatever else. But you can't fly around the world like a bird, like a majestic bird, like you can in Spider-Man, which really changes the way that you approach the open world. It feels much larger because you can go wherever you want. I didn't mean to abandon that mission. Oh, I've abandoned a mission by accident. That's okay. We're going to jump back into it in a second. There's these pretty sweet loading screens that have Spider-Man doing sweet stuff. Sometimes he's riding a subway. Sometimes he's eating a bagel, doing New York stuff. There's definitely a level of like kitschy New Yorkness to this game that I appreciate. That's part of Spider-Man. That's part of the comic books and the movies as well. Yeah. You'll also notice maybe in the distance there's like Avengers Tower and a handful of buildings that don't exist in regular New York, that don't exist in the world of New York, that reality New York. They only exist in Marvel Spider-Man New York. All right, I've messed up apparently, and I'm gonna skip a cinematic one more time. I accidentally exited the mission, so please excuse me while I do this, unfortunately, again, real quick. There's only a few of these in the game, I should note. There's only so many sections of Manhattan. that you have to unlock using this, so this is not something you're going to spend a lot of time doing. So yeah, another question about whether or not you can use Spidey senses. And you can. You can only in the fights, though. Spidey senses exclusively exist as a means of allowing Spider-Man to like parry around. It's part of the fighting system. I actually can show you right now because I have to redo the fight because I somehow accidentally abandoned the mission I was on, so please excuse that. But you'll see in this fight that when an enemy goes to punch me, I'll have a moment where there's like a halo that appears around Spider-Man's head that's white initially and then purple. And when it turns purple, if you press the circle button, the dodge button, you you execute what is called a perfect dodge, and that stuns the enemy essentially for a moment. And so yeah, there is a spider sense, and it's used in I think a smart way. So you can see that like sense around his head that's appearing during the fight. And you can see that since I did it at exactly the right moment, he web slings them, and they're stuck there trying to get stuff off their face, looking like they got a head crab on from Half-Life. Yeah, it's a really useful way of turning fights into something that feels like rhythmic almost. You see those, and you see these kind of pop-ups where you can get these instant kills like I just did there. And it turns fights into a means of like I'm kind of like dancing all over these guys, basically, which is a lot of fun and makes it makes fighting really fun. Then the fighting gets much more complicated as the game goes on, but it's like by 10 hours in, by 5 hours in, you feel like an absurdly powerful Spider-Man, essentially. So there's another crime in progress. So it's trying to teach me about my other use of Spidey sense, I guess, is that I can, while flinging around as Spider-Man, I can push in the right thumbstick, R3, if you are so well versed, and it shows me stuff in the nearby neighborhood. So it showed me that there's a crime nearby, and so I'm able to go take care of it. Looks like a snitch is being harassed here. I've heard snitches get stitches, and so we should make sure that she doesn't get any stitches. Oh, there's questions about suits, it sounds like. So Corey off in the control room tells me there's people asking about suits, and there are a lot of suits in this game. They have not been introduced at this point in the game yet, so I will show them later on. I was intentionally saving it for later on because it's pretty spoilery. That's a lot of the unlocks in the game are these suits. So you can see right now I'm wearing a kind of traditional Spider-Man suit, red and blue, Spider-Man on the back, that kind of thing. Later on, though, you can unlock lots of different suits, like the Spider-Man Noir suit, or the Spider-Man 2099 suit, or all sorts of other stuff. There's a lot of them, and they all offer unique powers. Each one kind of unlocks its own unique power, and then you don't have to use that suit to use that power. You can pair those powers however you want. So I'm sorry, I'm getting murdered. So it's hard to fight these bad guys and talk at the same time. Sorry, everybody. So yeah, the suits are really useful and are really cool. They're more than just dress up. They offer a means of unlocking special powers that are fun and offer a lot of customization. So I'm gonna tap to web strike. And so this is introducing these guys called brutes, that big dude right there you see. Everybody else is kind of small. That guy hits way harder than everybody else. But he can get stung by the web just like anybody else. Ooh. And you can lock him up with the web just like that as well. And so I got to do that. And it's trying to teach me how to do that. And I'm also getting beat up by other people. You'll notice other people are not waiting for your fight to end. They will keep hitting you. They don't care. You can also notice that Spider-Man kind of runs all over the place. If I keep tapping on stuff, he will keep going after dudes. He does not get bored. But you also learn later on how to do lots of other stuff, like what I just did there, where I used a web to pull me towards the enemy. There's also these instances of kind of QTEs, I would say, quick time events, where you have to do something relatively quickly, responsively. And so in this instance, I'm moving the left thumbstick into the circle on the screen and then pressing the R1 button to stop this guy from holding this woman hostage. So I pull the gun away, I pull him away, and then I punch him in the face, and that's the end of that mission. She's appreciative. There's a lot of these. These are somewhat generic. Sometimes they're drug deals. Sometimes there's a hostage situation where somebody's taken a hostage. Sometimes they are kidnappings where you have to chase a car. But these kind of mix up the action. They're optional. You can choose whether or not you want to engage with them while you're going around the world. They're separate from the main story missions, though, which are varied. There's lots of different stuff you're doing in main story missions. So somebody asked if there are any type of missions that bring the Avengers in. The Avengers building is in the world. Doctor Strange's building is in the world. I have not seen any Avengers after what I think is at least 75% through the game, if not more. I would not be super surprised if any of them made an appearance. There are certainly lots of references to other superheroes. There's references to Daredevil. There's a Spider-Man suit that I believe was created by Tony Stark. I think it's called like the Stark suit. And that's, I mean, he's Iron Man. So like, there's Avengers stuff, but I don't believe there are Avengers straight up appearing in the game. I don't know for sure, though, and also would be totally unsurprised if there was something. Of note, there is an Avengers game being made. A AAA Avengers game is in the works currently. I believe Square Enix is the one publishing it, and Crystal Dynamics is the one making it. Crystal Dynamics, of course, the folks behind Tomb Raider. I believe that is all the case, but there's definitely a AAA Avengers game being made. So I don't know. I think there's some weirdness, though, also with the fact that Sony, as far as I know, owns the rights to Spider-Man. I don't know. The long and short is I don't know for certain that the Avengers aren't in this game, but I haven't seen them. Excuse me while I fix my earpiece. So you can see it kind of does the Assassin's Creed Far Cry thing where you unlock these things and it shows you the world around and it shows you some stuff that you might want to go get. There are these backpacks. There's like, I'm looking at this beam of light, for instance, right now. That's a backpack you can go pick up. Let's actually go pick that up real quick and I can give you an example of what I'm talking about. It's one of the many collectibles in this game, and it's a small thing, but it's something for fans, right? So I pick up this backpack. Peter Parker as Spider-Man in high school. The story conceit here is that in high school he hid these backpacks all over New York City, and they basically contain like mementos of various past Spider-Man things. So these are very fan-centric things. So you can see there's tons of them all over the city. There's 50-some of them or 80-something like that. I can't remember how many. But they are pretty neat. Let's see if I can. I can't actually look what's in the backpack yet. No? There we go. Press the view. So this is from Peter Parker's first date with Mary Jane. Mary Jane is in this game, as is Aunt May. They make appearances later on. Mary Jane being Peter Parker's ex in this game, but love interest in general, and Aunt May being his aunt, who takes care of him because his parents are not with him. So there's another thing nearby. I could do that, or I could stop the robbery, which is where's the yellow mark in the world I'm looking for? I guess that's what I'm doing, stopping the robbery. All right, I'm gonna go do that. So you can see this here is the entrance to the Brooklyn Bridge. Let's say Brooklyn Bridge. Corey, can you fact check that for me?
Open the safe. Do it.
Oh, so one question. We've got another question here. This question is from, I'm not sure. But the question is a smart one. In Grand Theft Auto, you can do lots of stuff, driving around, calling people to get together and hang out with them, and wondering what else you can do in this game besides fighting crime and swinging around. There's collection stuff, there's traversal stuff, so there are some missions where you are tasked with either like solving environmental problems like smog or testing water stuff in the world. I'm intentionally minimizing it so that I don't have to explain the whole thing, but the long and short is that they are like these challenges where you're swinging through the world and you have to swing through specific objects in the world and all this other kind of stuff. It's intentionally a kind of platforming challenge, basically, to use the swinging in the game for something other than just for fun. So there's those kind of challenges. There's finding stuff. There are puzzles to go solve if you want to go do more puzzles. So there's not like, I'm going to go play pool with my friend kind of stuff like there is in Grand Theft Auto. But a lot of Grand Theft Auto, I feel like, is making fun for yourself, right? It's causing a bunch of crime and then escaping the cops. And there's not that in this game because you are Spider-Man, right? Like, you can't hurt people. Actually, in a hilarious move, if I want to go try to punch people right now, you'll notice Spider-Man giving like the thumbs up and waving. I'm pressing the punch button right now, and he does this. So you can't actually punch anyone or drive through them. You can, however, wave. So your punch button becomes a wave button. Also, people in the world react to you. You can go like take photos with them sometimes. Sometimes people ask for high fives. Yeah, and there's lots of color. There's lots of little New York City color, like these New York hot dogs. Maybe you've heard of them. We've got a question from Marcus Johnson. And what does Marcus Johnson have to say? Okay, so the question is, if the open world is limited strictly to Manhattan, or if you can jump on the bridge and head over to Brooklyn. And the answer is, sadly, no, you cannot. You can't go to Queens, you can't go to Staten Island, you can't go to the Bronx, and you cannot go to Brooklyn, despite the fact that the Brooklyn Bridge and the Manhattan Bridge are both in this game. I'll actually give you an example of what happens when I try swinging to Brooklyn, because it's unfortunate. You can go in the water, I will say that. I wouldn't suggest going in the water in real life on the edge of Manhattan, but you could. You could go into the East River. I wouldn't suggest it. So here I am on the bridge. You can see that there's more bridges in the distance. Another bridge there, bridge, just like in real life. And you can see some of Brooklyn. You can see some of downtown Brooklyn over there, and you can see some of the beginning of Queens and upper Brooklyn, and you can jump into this water. But let's see what happens if I try swinging. It'll just, well, in this instance, I have a mission going on, so I'm going to return to the mission. But the same thing would happen if I didn't have a mission. It essentially says, you're leaving the playable area, you have to return, and it spins you around. And so that's the unfortunate truth. So you can see some of Brooklyn in the distance, or Queens. There's a couple of buildings you can climb to that you can get really good views of all of New York City from you know, the bottom of Manhattan all the way out to Staten Island and Brooklyn, but you can't go there, unfortunately. So you can see I'm kind of nearing downtown Manhattan here. I'm, I guess, like, I don't know, I don't even know where this would be, I guess, like kind of Houston-y, but along the east edge of Manhattan. And you can see boats out there and whatever else. And they do a pretty good job modeling it. You can see that looks like Governor's Island there. And then there's the Statue of Liberty is past these buildings over here. So they do model all of that stuff, but you can't actually go to any of it, unfortunately. So yeah, this is Manhattan. This game is definitely set in Manhattan and models Manhattan, but you should not expect to go to all of Manhattan, and you should not, like, you can't go to the Heights, for instance, if for any New York City folks out there, any New Yorkers out there. But you can go as high as like Upper Harlem, basically. Central Park is also there, and it exists, and we'll go there. I'm going to complete this mission, and then we can just do some free swing around the city. I'll go from Harlem all the way to the bottom. And if there's anything in particular you want to see, you know, if there's a place that you guys really want to check out, I'm happy to go check that out. But yeah, we're in a lot of the game, though. I think I'm aiming to kind of represent this game more than anything else. Like, I don't want to show a ton of story or a ton of dialogue. A lot of what you're going to be doing in this game is, it's a Spider-Man simulator, for lack of a better word. There's a lot of beating up dudes in stylish ways, a lot of snark, so much snark, and swinging around as a Spider-Man, And you can just run up buildings. You'll see. Yeah, I can see it. All right, so we've got one more question, it sounds like. What is the story of the game? And is it related to the comic books or the Marvel comic book universe? The answer is, well, I'm not 100% certain how it relates to the movies or the Marvel Cinematic Universe or the any particular threads from the comic book. I know that it certainly takes in various elements of modern Spider-Man. So I'm not spoiling anything by saying that I believe his name is Miles. He's one of the newer Spider-Man men that was introduced at some point. He appears in this game. He's not as Spider-Man, but he is in the game. The main thrust of the story is that there is a bad guy to take down. In the trailers for the game, they've shown that the main bad guy is a gentleman named Martin Lee. He's, as far as I know, from the comic books as well. But if I'm being perfectly honest, I have not read Spider-Man comic books, at very least in over 15 years. So I cannot tell you for certain if there is a particular thread this takes from. As far as I know, it is a completely new story that is based in the modern world of Spider-Man. So basically, the answer is like kind of. It takes inspiration, I think, from modern Spider-Man, but it isn't necessarily directly a story that was told in the comics or in the movies. And so you can see there's some iconic stuff that you'll just notice while you're going around, right? So this gorgeous church here, and this is Union Square, but it's been changed a lot. Like, it's not exactly what Union Square would be in real life. So Union Square is much larger, and as far as this, maybe I'm wrong, maybe this is not Union Square. No, this is definitely Union Square. So yeah, it's just not very big. The way that the bottom is laid out here is not exactly what Times Square looks like. That giant church is not there in it, as far as I know. So there's some differences for sure. Also, forgive me if that's just, I'm pretty sure that's Union Square. That looked like Union Square. And we've got Washington Square Park over here. Yeah, that was Union Square because we're this close to Washington Square Park. So Washington Square Park, pretty large, but not huge. The Arc de Triomphe, much smaller, much less impressive. The fountain in the middle, good, but I don't see anybody playing drums. I don't see anybody trying to sell me weed in 20 bags. I don't see any of the telltale signs of Washington Square Park. Anyway, funny jokes aside, let's go to this mission. It certainly is beautiful, I will say that. Just, the sun setting against the buildings and the reflection of things, and it's a good looking game. I again apologize for the quality of the stream. I know the stream is not super high quality right now. We're gonna work on improving that in the future. So, yeah. All right. You can see the High Line here. We're going to see who we're going to talk to here. I'm gonna probably jump out here in just a second and load up a different save so that we can see some stuff later in the game and see some of the other suits. And all that good stuff. And we're gonna wrap pretty soon also, I should point out. This is not something that, I'm gonna quit out of the game. That's totally fine. we're going to probably keep these these playthroughs to an hour-ish, depending on what you guys want to see, on what there is to show of any particular games. If you have any particular games that you'd love to see in the upcoming months, let us know. Let us know in the comments. Let us know in the questions during the live game itself. That would be great. We would love to know what you'd love to see. Expect major stuff, right? Like expect Red Dead Redemption 2, Call of Duty, Shadow of the Tomb Raider, Battlefield 5, all that good stuff. We'll be hitting all the major marks, but if there's anything in particular you really want to see, I'd love to know. Yeah, this is our first shot at Gaming Insider right here today, but we'll have many of these coming up. Next Friday we'll be doing Shadow of the Tomb Raider with my colleague Kevin, and I'm excited to see what that game looks like. It looks really cool. So this is my save from way later in the game. You can see that Spider-Man is wearing a different suit with a big white spider on it, and he's got these pretty swanky shoes. And we can jump into the menu here and look through some of the suits so far. I've got a decent amount of them unlocked. You can see that there's, what, 5, 10, 15, 25, 26 different suits? Plenty of suits. Several of them look pretty similar. Classic suit versus the advanced suit, not that different. Same thing with the classic suit repaired, or the Stark suit, which is the one I believe Tony Stark must have made for Peter Parker, I assume. I don't know. Please tell me in the comments. But there's a bunch of other ones here. I'm not going to go through every one of them because I don't want to spoil all of them. But you can see that there's a ton of different ones here, and they all offer unique powers. That, I think, is the most interesting thing, actually, is that they each offer a power that's unlocked that you can use with that suit, but you can use any suit with it. The suit is completely cosmetic, but each cosmetic suit unlock comes with something that's meaningful to gameplay that you can then swap into other suits. And that's really cool. So like in the one I'm using right now is called Spider Bro. It's a spider drone that electrocutes my enemies. It is very useful. And these kind of work on a cooldown, so I can use it and then it hurts enemies for a couple of minutes, it disappears, and then many minutes later it recharges and I can deploy it again. There's lots of other ones here. There's like a web blossom where Spider-Man leaps into the air and sprays webs at everybody. There's one that makes you much more sneaky and quiet so that enemies won't alert other enemies when you've started fighting them. Bunch of different stuff, and they are really cool. I think that those are really great. So here we are at the bottom of Manhattan. I'm going to just run over to the new trade center, which should be pretty close to where we are right now. It's, in real life, bizarrely, right next to where we are, like a block away. So how about that? So where the heck is the trade center? It should be the tallest building here. And I can also give you a quick look at the map at this point in the game. There's the trade center. Flying around. Cool it. Pretty tall building. And right from the beginning, you can do all of this. The goal of this game from the developers that they stated is they wanted you to feel like a very competent Spider-Man right from the beginning. A Spider-Man that was at the height of his powers, who really understood what he was doing, wasn't just new to the experience, whatever. So this Spider-Man feels like a tough guy Spider-Man, for lack of a better words. He's got all his powers. He's able to do whatever you expect him to be able to do, essentially. And so from here you can see the entire city, basically. The distance here, the entirety of this island is where you can go. And let me see if I can grab photo mode here. I can probably zoom in, maybe? No, maybe not. Here we go. So there's a camera option in this game. You can take photos of landmarks. It's another collectible thing. It's a small thing. But yeah, you can essentially see that the entirety of Manhattan, Jersey along the west side, Brooklyn and Queens along the east side, and the Bronx to the north, Staten Island to the distant south. Yeah, so it is all of New York City. It's just limited in terms of where you can go, but it's honestly incredibly impressive. It's been amazing swinging around New York City as Spider-Man as a New York resident. I think it would probably be pretty cool also as a non-New York resident, but it's got a special something for somebody who lives here. It's been pretty amazing just swinging around the city that I know so well and live in. Yeah, so that is Spider-Man for the PlayStation 4. If you've missed any of the stream and want to know more, we jumped in earlier about an hour ago, and this will be archived, so you can check it out there. We'll be back next Friday with Shadow of the Tomb Raider, another brand new game, with my colleague Kevin. So please tune in then, and if you want to see more of this stuff, subscribe to Tech Insider on YouTube. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll be back next week. Take care.